Welcome back for the beginning of week 3. Today we'll be discussing chapter 5 and 6. So, chapter 5, real property disclosures and advisories. We're going to go over disclosure information advisory, the summary disclosures, and real estate advisories. Now, a lot of this chapter is a list of forms and the actual forms. So I probably won't get into too much detail with any given form, but it is good. It is a lot of reading, but it is good to go through the forms to see exactly what's on them. Now, disclosure information advisory, the DIA, this is given to sellers prior to completing required disclosure forms. So this form is used when you start a listing, and that will tell the seller all of the other disclosures that they're going to have to provide. Here's an actual copy of the form, and then it does give the seller's introduction, description of forms, how to prepare to complete the disclosure obligations, and the instructions for completing all of the disclosure forms. The California Association of Realtors has a list of all the disclosures that are available on their website. We use a product called WinForms in order to create all of the disclosures and the paperwork that you need in order to complete a transaction. So as far as advisories, the statewide buyer and seller advisory covers all of these topics: the buyer and seller rights and duties, brokers' rights and duties, the investigation of physical condition of the property use and ownership, offsite and neighborhood condition, legal requirements, contract issues, other factors affecting the property, and local disclosures. All of these items are covered in the statewide buyer and seller advisory. It is a longer advisory, and I encourage you to read the advisory so you understand what's in it. Another advisory is the natural hazard disclosure statement, the NHD. Now this will cover all of the natural hazards that occur in the area of the property. So if you're in a flood zone or a seismic zone, earthquake fault zone, a military strike area, an airport area, discusses Megan's Law, all that type of information. So if you look at these disclosures, the one thing it will not cover in California is if it's actually in a seismic hazard zone. It says the map is not available on all of the NHD statements. In my opinion, it's because most properties are actually in a seismic hazard zone, and they do not want to disclose that. Okay, advisability of title insurance. It's required for the purchase exchange of real property where a policy of title insurance will not be issued to the buyer. This is very rare. And then the agency disclosure, which we've already discussed, is the requirement of agents to disclose whether they're working for the buyer or seller. Airport in the vicinity, the NHD will show that. The broker's duty to inspect property, that would be done on the AVID form, and a real estate licensee has to conduct a reasonably competent visual inspection of the property. Broker's statutory duty to inspect property, again, reasonably competent and diligent visual inspection of the property, does not include areas which are reasonably and normally inaccessible. So there's no moving of the furniture, there's no taking pictures off the wall. It is just a visual inspection on how the property sits at the time of the offer or the inspection. Okay, carbon monoxide is required now, so carbon monoxide detector disclosure. There's also an earthquake safety book. that has to be given to the buyer from the seller. You have to remember any death within the last 3 years on the property must be disclosed. And if the property is in close proximity to the farm or a farm or ranch as part of the NHD. So the seller doesn't actually report that themselves. FHA HUD inspection notice. So if a home is a HUD home being sold by HUD, it will have an inspection notice on it. Federal withholding and California withholding tax, it's called the FERPTA. So there's certain withholding of sales for either foreign persons or people who do not qualify to be exempt from the California withholding, normally investors, for the 3 1/3% of the gross price. And then for foreign persons, it's 10% of the price to the IRS. Flood, disaster, and gas, those are a couple of other disclosures. Groundwater basin, home energy rating system booklet. So this one's optional. Not every transaction has that one. Again, the earthquake safety booklet, which was kind of discussed earlier. Industrial use zone. So these are examples of things that have to be disclosed. Lead-based paint pamphlet. That's if the home is prior to 1978. If it's after 1978, then lead-based paint was not used. Material facts. So any material facts, and you disclose material facts on several different forms. Most prevalently, the transfer disclosure statement. Megan's Law. And Melrose, so if there's special assessments, that must be disclosed. If there was a meth lab cleanup order, military ordinance order, those have to be disclosed. The military ordinance is on the NHD. NHD also shows mining operation. Mold would have to be disclosed if there's knowledge of mold on the property in the transfer disclosure statement. Okay, pest control inspections are not done on every property now that's sold. Used to be a lender requirement for pest inspection, no longer is the case. But if a pest inspection is agreed upon and done, then the copy has to be given to the buyer. Environmental hazards booklet, again, that's the same as the earthquake and environmental hazards. Seismic hazard zones, again, that should be on the NHD, but every NHD I've ever seen says the map is not available. Okay, smoke alarms and the written statement of compliance. Smoke alarms have to be in compliance. If it's in a special flood area, the NHD will show that. Supplemental property tax. This notice is given to every buyer. What supplemental property tax is normally when you purchase a property, the property is still assessed at its former value. So the seller, if they purchased a property a long time ago, say 20 years ago, they may purchase it for $200, but the property now is being sold for $500. So the new buyers would assume that their property tax is based on $500, but it's not until the county reassesses. So if they get a bill in the meantime, it's going to be at the level of the $200,000. Once the county reassesses, it will now be at the current market value of $500, and that difference between $500 and $200, the tax on that is going to be paid in what's called supplemental property tax notice. If this is confusing, let me know because I can explain this much better in detail. Okay, Subdivision Map Act, division of property to 2 or more lots, that has to be disclosed. Again, transfer disclosure statements where the seller discloses any material facts and also discloses what's on the property. Fire hazard severity zone, that's usually in the mountains, things like that where there's fire zones. Water conserving fixtures disclosure. Built before 94. Um, it's a law that the seller must disclose any non-compliant plumbing fixtures, and they must be replaced with water-conserving plumbing fixtures. Okay, water heater bracing statement. So the water heaters have to be braced and braced correctly before the sale can be completed. And then window security bars and safety release. So if you have security bars on your windows, there has to be a safety release so people can get out of the house in the event of a fire. If those mechanisms aren't working, then they need to be fixed prior to close of escrow. Okay, the statewide buyer and seller advisory we talked about at the beginning. It does remind buyers and sellers of the importance of investigating the property. It lists many aspects to consider: soil conditions, geological hazards, environment hazards, mold, all these items. It just brings to the buyer and seller attention that they may or may not exist. And then for the seller, the document does provide advice and insulation against claims. So it basically lays out the responsibility of both parties and what can exist in the property that would prevent the sale from occurring. And that's a conclusion of Chapter 5. Once again, if you have any questions, please reach out to me via Canvas or email, and I'll be sure to answer any questions that you might have. Have a great day. Thank you.